For this project, we're going to be making our own chameleons. The lesson here is we're going to be using warm colors and cool colors. I have a little video in here talking about the color wheel so you can learn about what colors mixed together work, as well as to remind you of using a set of colors, so the warm colors and the cool colors. You could play with it in your chameleon. Maybe you want a rainbow chameleon, but think about a solid background of warm or cool, so that way your chameleon is the one that stands out the most. I also have a video attached in our slide here of videos or information about chameleons, like the really fun 10 facts about them, as well as the art lesson itself right here. So for this project, you're going to need your piece of paper, and you're also going to need some oil pastels, as well as a pencil to start drawing with. If you would like, another neat trick that I add in here is using a Q-tip with some baby oil on a plastic baggie, and it just blends and smooths out your oil pastels a little bit more so it looks a little more painterly like. So let's get started. In this project, feel free to either look up some images of chameleons or iguanas that are attractive to you, or follow along with me on how to draw mine. Once you find the type of chameleon that you're looking at, I have some examples in our Google Classroom so you could take a look at, or you can look on other images in Google or some videos, or you can follow along with me here. And what we can do is draw a chameleon together, and then you can go in and add your own colors and so forth with it. So let's take a look at our paper. Do you want to have your chameleon on a landscape? Do you want it in this direction, or do you want to change it and have it portrait? So the thing is if you did a portrait style, your chameleon's going to be a little bit smaller because it's this long, and you'll have more room for branches and so forth. Whereas if you have it this way, you can have your chameleon a little bit larger and on a branch with some background as well. So I'm going to be using a pen because it's just a little bit easier for you to see in the video itself. Feel free to use a pencil, or you can go in with a Sharpie even if you want, or just anything that you have nearby. So the first thing I'm going to start figuring out is how I want to draw my chameleon. So let's get started on that. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on my chameleon's head. So I'm going to draw kind of this wavier line like this. And then I'm going to give like a little loop down like this. And right here, I want to kind of curve in and draw a line like here. And then next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on its eye. So I'm going to draw its eye. And then I'm going to draw a circle on the inside for his eye. And I'm going to add some of those lines to show that it's a movable eye. So I'm going to do a little bit of a curve here, line above, and I'm going to do it underneath. You can connect it if you want like that too. You don't have to. You can leave it. It's up to you. I'm going to give him a little nostril. Good. Next, for the top of his little head, I'm just going to draw some marks like this. And another mark here. You guys are doing fantastic. And for the mouth part, I want to make it a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to kind of loop it like this and color it in. And then I'm going to start making its chin, right? So I'm going to do a line down, angle it a little bit more, And then I'm going to go straight across like this. He looks kind of funny, doesn't he? Good. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give a couple little chin hairs because that's what my little chameleon here has. I'm just going to add these lines, just give them a little bit of hairs. They could be different sizes. I keep doing a little bit of a pattern. And I'm going to draw another line here, right? And under his mouth, I'm going to give a couple little bits of texture. So I'm just going to do some dots. Right? Give him a little bit of dots. I'm going to do a couple little dots up here too. Just makes it a little bit more fun, right? And for our eyeball itself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of a curve inside. And then I'll color that top part in. So you can see that little bit of a white, right? So now our chameleon has some fun texture that we're adding in here as well. We're going to use our oil pastels to really add those colors, but at least now we've got a little bit of a start. All right, now comes the fun part. So near his ear, or the top part, not his ear, but what we're going to do is do a tiny little bit of a U, just to give us some space. And then we're going to do a giant size rainbow and kind of curl down and stop. Good. The next thing is now we need to come up with adding in some of the other areas of our chameleon. So let's go to the neck. We're going to do a curve here. And it almost looks like a Y now, right? I'm going to do another line. It's like a backwards L that's curved like this. And then I'm going to start doing his leg. So I'm going to do a little bit bumpy of a line. And then I'm going to do out like this. And I'm going to curve my line like this. Here I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go a nice angle out. And then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to come really close here. So I'm going to do a small little circle because we want to make it look like it's going to the back. And I'm going to draw that line here. Because they have these tiny little legs. Their bodies are really big, but they're tiny little legs, right? And now I'm going to draw a curve here because it's going to be holding onto a branch. And then I'm going to draw another little bit of a curve here. Okay? So now we got a lot of character going on in our little piece. Good. The next thing is we want to do some lines like this for his belly area. Okay. We need to do another leg. So here's going to be a rainbow. We're going to draw down on both sides. Don't worry if it cuts in because our oil pastels will cover over some things too. And then I'm going to curve. I'm going to have this go backwards for a second and then curve this way and connect it. And then I'm going to do a line here. So it looks like a leg, right? And now I want to add in a branch. So my branch is going to bend a little bit. So for me, I'm going to draw a line in between my legs. If you have one, if you don't worry. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a line going this way You can add in a stump if you want. And I'm going to make a nice thick branch like this. I'm going to do the same thing. Don't worry if it ends up a little wobbly because branches have some texture, so it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And I'm just going to kind of add in some marks like this. Make my branch a little bit thicker. Perfect, right? You can always go back in a little bit and add in some marks. I'm going to add in some marks here. You can add in some curved lines like this and then add a couple from the top. You can go in and add some texture like that. So you can add in any type of lines that you want on this tree branch, just to give it a little bit of texture. And then I'm also going to just remind myself that this is where the shadow is under here. So I'm just going to make it a little bit darker. And I could add the shadow line here, like such. Awesome. So I just keep adding. You can even do a couple little dots. Sometimes I feel like the dots and dashes make some fun little extra details. It's up to you. There's no wrong answer with how you can decorate your tree branch. I've seen others do tree branches with this type of style. So it's like drawing a 6 and then you do parentheses around it. So those are some other options too. Good. So now that we have this start, the next thing that we're going to do is finish our tail, and we'll add a little bit more up here. Okay? So my tail, I finished it here. I'm going to see where it needs to continue. And I'm going to just take it down, and I'm going to go into a nice big spiral like that. Then, and what I'm going to do is I need to make sure that my tail gets smaller. So I'm going to draw an angled line out, right? And I'm going to continue around with it, going inside, but it gets skinnier and skinnier and skinnier until I connect it. And there's my cute little chameleon tail, right? Doesn't have to be perfect or anything, you just have fun with it. Now I got to finish my belly of my chameleon, so I'm going to kind of just make a wavy kind of line, and that'll remind me that that's where my chameleon's tummy goes. And then at the top I'm going to add in a couple of these same hairs, right? Just to give them a little bit of fun texture. Okay. And I'll do a couple of little dots for texture here. And we can always go in and add some other fun details if you want, right? There's so many different options of how you can add in some fun details and make it come alive and be funny, okay? So we're going to go in and add our color in just a moment. The other thing is we can have just a couple like the claw marks. You know, I have just some of the chameleon claws so you can kind of see where their claws might be. Okay? So here's my chameleon holding on to its tree branch. So the next thing that we're going to do is we are going to use our oil pastels. Okay, so in our sketchbook, before we start doing our iguana, I want you to practice with your oil pastels a little bit. We really want to make some really good blending. So I've got some different examples. I've got, you know, the Crayola oil pastels here, and then I also have the Crayola Portfolio oil pastels here. So the Portfolio series is just, I mean, everything's quite similar. This one's just a little bit more fluid, meaning like it just goes on a little bit softer and smoother, like an oilier type of look to it. So you can see the difference. It's just, the pigments, the colors are just a little bit different, but they all work the same way. So I'm going to kind of mix and match because I don't have all the similar colors. What we want to do is you want to kind of do a gradient. You can play with the different colors. See what it looks like when you put one color down and you blend some of the other colors on top of it. What does it look like? Going from the dark to light blue, dark blue, putting dark blue on top of purple. You could put it entirely all on top of it, or you can even go slowly where you do part of it and then you blend out, right? And you keep doing some different shadings. So play with some of these colors. There's nothing wrong with putting a little bit of color on top, mixing a little bit more in here and just getting a variety. You can also, you can feel what it feels like with your finger. It does move around a lot. It's not my favorite when that happens. So I usually say why we don't do the background first on our chameleon is you want to do the body so that way we're not smearing our background and things on there. We can always fix the background, but we start with the body first. And then when you're working on your background, you'll work in areas. Like you'll work on this spot, turn your paper. Work on this spot, turn your paper. Or find a way of working this way and then moving it all the way over and working, if you're lefty that way, or if you're righty, start closest to you and then work away. So your arm is not, blending all of these colors off of it. And obviously oil pastels are slightly a little bit dirty. There's lots of ways to blend these even more, but for our purpose, we're just playing a little bit with just doing basic blending on this work here, okay? If you really wanted to, you can always use like a Q-tip with a little bit of baby oil, and it will spread and move around really nicely, a little bit more like paint that way too. So just a little bit, like a tiny, tiny smidgen. So play around with some of these, see what you like. Do you like to have, we're going to stick with, right now, obviously I took out the cool colors. I'm going to do my chameleon in cool colors, but you can always do warm colors. So if you do your chameleon in the warm colors of red, yellow, and orange, then I would suggest doing the background in the cool colors. If you do the cool colors for your chameleon, the warm colors will be in the background. Okay? So play with a little bit and then we'll get started on the next step. So here I have my colors organized a little bit easier for me to grab, and I'm looking at a picture. So as you're looking at a picture, just like we were practicing, you want to start with maybe the lightest color first. So I'm going along and I'm just giving myself a nice base using one of the lighter colors. I've got a lighter green. It's easier to go back and darken anything, but it's harder to make something lighter. So that's what I'm doing is I'm just building off of it. So I put a little bit of the green. I've got a lighter green I'm mixing on here too, and just kind of piecing it together and blending it. Just like we were practicing in our sketchbook, putting one color down, you're going to feel a lot of the paper. It's going to feel rough. And then the next part you're going to notice is there's a lot of white showing through it. So with oil pastels, you want to build layers. So imagine when you build a sandwich, you have the bread, you put the peanut butter on it and put the jelly on it if that's what you do, or building a cheeseburger, whatever it is, you build in layers to put it all together. Same thing when you're using oil pastels is you want to build, but you want to build with the lightest things first. So if you notice that you put the dark on a little too dark, it's easier to take a little bit of it off by adding some of the lighter color. If you're using your oil pastels and realize, oh, my yellow has a lot of red on it and I don't want that, just take a paper towel or a napkin, wipe off the tip of it, and easily it's all clean again for you. So build on the layers. I have one color and then I blend another color on top of it. And you'll start feeling that the oil pastels get really nice and smooth, almost slippery on the paper. So you'll keep working. You can do left to right motions, look at the picture and see what you plan on doing. I work a lot of left to right unless I'm going around an eye. And usually in animals or, other even adults or people, when you're drawing their hair, think of how do you brush your hair? Look at the picture. How would you brush that hair? How would you pet that animal? And that's how you should design your strokes of how you're using your oil pastels or coloring it. So if I want something to look longer, left to right. I want something to look taller, color it up and down. So think about it that way. I'm just slowly building my colors in here, playing with them, and you'll see how they just kind of blend in a lot easier. I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see the process, and eventually I'll speed it up. Another technique that I really like to do is you can use some baby oil and, just a little bit, not much, and a Q-tip, and you can actually spread around your oil pastel. So I'm going to put it on a plastic baggie. So this is something that, I usually give to you in a little bit, so definitely ask an adult to do it with you. It's not something that you really want to breathe in a lot of, but a tiny bit. Use your Q-tip. And it then spreads around. So you'll notice it kind of picks it up, but it does a really neat job just spreading it around. So you just grab your little baby oil and it can blend some of those areas that were harder to blend. It just kind of turns it into a little bit like a paint and just smooths everything out really nice. So it just gives it that little extra paint look, especially those areas that you just want to move around a little bit more. Kind of like how we use with our markers. We use water to spread it around. Same thing with this. So if you wanted more of that painterly look, that's what you would use. A little goes a long way. You don't need a lot. And you just kind of slowly build your way through it. Okay? So those are some extra little techniques that you can turn your drawing into more of a painterly, look in order to smooth out some of those white areas, as you can see here.